You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So I apologize ahead of time if you guys can hear like any fan noise or anything like that. I mean, you shouldn't, but if you do, it's because we have that crazy heat dome right now that's...
Man.
I don't even know. I think it's over pretty much the whole U.S. or whatever, but it's definitely over Michigan right now. So it's bad. It's really bad. So, but yeah, we didn't come here, though, to talk about the weather with you guys. We came here to talk about something that's very near and dear to our hearts. We always talk about the Clone Wars. We talk about Rebels. We talk about a lot of these animated shows, but we thought it would be interesting, an all-original thing. This is not based on any articles or anything like that. But you actually had the idea, if I remember correctly. It's like, let's pit these two against each other. Who actually did a better job with story, with character, with bringing in EU characters, things like that. You know. So what was pretty much the catalyst? Like, what made you even think of this?
I think it's with the animation, you know, they continue the stories, most of the stories to which we already know. So in looking at that, you kind of want to look at the story as far as like who told the better story, the characters that we kind of fell in love with that were created. You know, some have lasted, you know, the test of time where people want to see them in live action now. And just really like when we start looking at the story of Star Wars, you know, which group really pushed I don't want to say the envelope, but who really pushed the narrative forward as far as within their own, I guess, ecosystem, as far as who was able to give us a lot and do it in a very effective way, where it's like, you know what, this is almost where we can look at the animations almost as well as we do the films, pretty much.
Well, and I think a lot of people do. I mean, I think that at least the Clone Wars, and even to a degree Rebels, is looked at. It's certainly looked at in a better light than the sequel trilogy. Which, I mean, granted, you know, let's keep the bar low, right? But
Right.
Again, I mean, I think that the Clone Wars and then eventually Rebels, because I know with you and I, they both started out somewhat the same way, where we watched the first episode or two and we're like, nah, I don't know about this. And then, of course, as you go on and you get deeper, not only do you actually enjoy it, but you soon become a really huge fan of it. I mean, I will say I think the Clone Wars did suffer from being a 22-episode season. You know, I think that there's a lot more filler definitely in the Clone Wars than there is in Rebels. Just by nature of the fact that they got to fill up 22, episodes per season versus like, how many was it for Rebels? Wow, I don't actually remember. Yeah, we should look that up.
It was 12?
It might have been. Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was 12.
Look that up.
But...
While you look that up, Ted basically joins us. He says, I still can't choose between them.
It's hard. It really is. Especially because it's not like... It'll be different if you had two different studios creating it. You know, like somebody did Clone Wars, somebody else did Rebels, but they're coming out of the same house. So...
Yeah, I mean, about the only distinction that you can make is that the Clone Wars is a little bit more George Lucas. I mean, obviously, Filoni was working with him, but he was working more or less under him. And then Rebels is the one that's pretty much all Filoni. And it's the first series that Filoni took what he learned from Lucas and basically applied it to his own show. So there is that distinction. I mean, I don't know. I think, although you can't really count Season 7, because Season 7 of the Clone Wars actually happened after Lucas had already sold it. Because for those who don't remember, what happened was Lucas Filoni, they made the first 5 seasons, and then it was on the Cartoon Network, and then Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney, and then basically after that, they cobbled together a season 6 because Lucas was in the midst of trying to complete season 6 along with his live, what was that called, 1313 or whatever, Coruscant Underworld live action TV series. And he had finished 100 episodes of that. I mean, that was going to be the first live action Star Wars television series. So he was right in the middle of it. So once Disney bought it, they basically cobbled together a 6th season out of a lot of unfinished episodes. And I don't know, I think there was only like 8 or 9 or something. I don't remember the exact number. So did you look up what Rebels is?
Yeah. So Rebels had 4 seasons with varying episode counts. Season 1 had 15 episodes. Season 2 and 2 and 3 each have 22. And then season 4 has 16.
And this is Rebels then, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, when you look at these, again, I think that's the first distinction that you have to make. The second distinction is that obviously Rebels went like almost half the seasons that Clone Wars did.
Yep.
Clone Wars ended up with 7 seasons. Rebels only had 4.
4.
So there is that. So I do think that Rebels was a little bit tighter. And I think it might have been a little bit more cohesive for that reason, even though, again, this is a really good thing. And, Ted, of course, said, look, I mean, this is really hard to do. And it is, because you would be tempted to say Clone Wars, because Clone Wars went on longer. It had more episodes per season for the most part. And because of that, they were able to jam a lot more in there. So, I mean, if you're going to talk about the canon and the lore and all that stuff, you might be tempted to give it to Clone Wars, but you do have to stop and think about exactly what lore and what canon was in there. Now, the nice thing about it is I have this handy little graphic that we can use to compare the two and talk about it, where we basically divide it into 3 categories, right? Story expansion, character development, and the EU characters, because it's also vital to compare these based on how many EU characters they brought in, because that does significantly change a lot of things, and people were very much in love with those stories. Talking about the Legends, the old expanded universe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, so for let's, I guess we could do story expansion first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Under the Clone Wars, it expanded the Clone Wars era extensively. I mean, it basically, what am I trying to say? I think it actually expanded it even beyond, in some ways, the EU books. But so that's definitely because, again, the EU didn't really delve into the Clone Wars too much. So this is the first time that we actually get exposure to the Clone Wars. And obviously it deepened the Jedi lore and the politics and all that, because during the Clone Wars we see a lot in the Jedi Temple. We see a lot between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka. We're introduced to Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, right? And, of course, toward the end, especially because it overlaps with Episode 3, it really provided context for Order 66, which, of course, the Bad Batch then picks up in Season 1, pretty much, right? But then on the Rebel side, with the story expansion, in Rebels, you get the early, Rebel Alliance formation, which, of course, we've explored more in Andor, but it really started here. It actually started in Rebels that you see that. It expanded the Force mysticism, saw a lot more Force powers, a lot of the stuff between Kanan and Ezra, you had the Bendu, you had a lot of things like that were brought into it. The whole concept almost of a gray Jedi without really saying it, but they basically introduced that concept in Rebels. And then it introduced the early Imperial oppression, because now we're firmly between Episodes 3 and 4, and in fact, Rebels takes place kind of in the latter side, right? It's probably like 2-3 years, whatever, before episode 4. So from a story expansion, what are your thoughts there? What do you think that who are you giving it to?
Yeah, I think from the I think from the story, expansion. I mean, yeah, you can definitely make some arguments for both sides, and I'm sure we're gonna be saying that, all throughout this. However, I think for me in this category, I'm going to go with Clone Wars.
Yeah, me too.
Simply because, man, you glean so much information. Because I think the Clone War, and the thing is, the Clone Wars are vital. Like, without the Clone Wars, you don't have any of the original trilogy. So, and we got the Clone Wars movie, we kind of saw how it began, but it went on for so long. And in that time period, so much happened. There's some things, even when you're looking at the development of the Jedi, we see the growth of Anakin, we see the budding of Ahsoka and the growth of her, but we also see one of the things I can see is like the whole story of Barriss Offee, and her master. I can't think of her name. It's like Undula something. But
we're
yeah,
so bad with that stuff.
I know. But yeah, well, like we saw that. Like I remember the mission that they had to go on together. When it was Barriss Offee and just Ahsoka. You saw the whole love thing that Obi-Wan had to go through when he was dealing with Duchess Satine. So there's so much character development. And you understand, like, okay, because Obi-Wan always seemed like he was just such a starch, by the rules kind of guy. And you even saw him kind of bend the rules a little bit here and there. Maybe not as much as Qui-Gon or Anakin, but he's human too. There's a lot. Oh, we saw the
well, there's a Siege of Mandalore. There's
Siege of Mandalore. We saw
the dark saber or whatever.
Yeah, you have the younglings going to Ilium to find the crystals for their lightsabers.
Right, the whole crystal thing was brought up in that.
Yeah, so you got to see
the father, the son and daughter. That whole thing. There's like a whole
lot of stuff. But then even onto the aspect of Palpatine, right? Watching how Palpatine is crafting the whole story of shifting the war and how he's kind of manipulating things. We're seeing how, and you bring this up a lot, about how he has to kind of play like he's this incompetent, doddering old man, and really like he has the power to like obliterate, half of these things, but he has to play the fool almost.
Well, ironically, that's... Remember, it's a Clone Wars episode that I first brought that up. Isn't that weird Godzilla type creature?
Yeah, the Zilla Beast or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Zilla Beast. That's the first one where it's kind of like, man, you're, in order to protect your identity, you are seriously having to act here because the thing is
have to be all in, dude.
Yeah, first of all, that thing just kind of had a little Woody for him. That Zilla Beast was like zeroed in on him. So
because it was drawn by the dark side, and that's the thing that we didn't understand. So why is it? But you understand because it's drawn by the dark side of the Force. That's why it's so attracted to Palpatine.
Yeah, no, without question. All right, before I give, my reasons. They're basically the same. Let me get through some of these chats. So,
okay.
Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast joins us again, which is great. We always love to hear from him. Clone Wars versus Rebels. What? Also, which is your favorite child?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which kid is your favorite?
Yeah, well, you know what? That's kind of how that's why.
That's basically how it is.
That's why we're doing this. That's exactly, because it is. It's difficult. This one is a really tough one. Even though both of us are giving, we're doing this again. If you're just tuning in or whatever, I don't know. But it's We're doing it based on story expansion, character development, and EU characters. So on the story expansion, both of us are saying Clone Wars. Universal basically says Clone Wars.
Okay.
Which makes sense. And goes on to say Clone Wars never actually ended. There are episodes that weren't released and not finished being written. No, that's not
entirely
true.
accurate.
That was true. That was true for season 6, and that's what season 6 was. Season 6, again, like we said, basically was like that. But then Filoni went back and wrapped it up in season 7. And so, yes, it's true that even though there was a handful of episodes in season 6 that never got finished, and probably, presumably, a season 7, I'm sure before, Lucas sold it, he probably was going to go 6, 7. I mean, who knows how many seasons Lucas actually planned. So I'm sure, besides the 12 or how many ever, kind of half-finished ones that we got as season 6, I'm sure there were other ones. I mean, look, Dark Disciple, the novel, that was one.
Yep.
Everybody forgets. What was the Dooku thing? The remember the novel that read like a script, and it read like a script because it was an unfinished Clone Wars thing? What the heck was that thing called? Master and Apprentice is the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon thing. It was something like that, though.
Yeah.
Man, why am I blanking on this?
Yeah.
You think that before I do these shows, I would,
Well, because there's so much information,
Well, not only that, but we're not planning on talking about stuff like this. Wow, this is driving me. You're looking it up, I hope.
Yes.
All right. So, yes, from that standpoint.
It's even bad. Jedi Lost. Thank you.
Jedi Lost. Thank you. Jedi Lost was another one. That was another Clone Wars unproduced Clone Wars episode, basically. And that's why, if you actually read that novel, it reads exactly like a script, because it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, of course, Universal goes on to say approximately 40 episodes worth of story arcs were left unfinished. And he brings up Siege of Mandalore. Yeah, we brought that up, probably 30 seconds before he popped on. But that's basically where I think also, Clone Wars has the edge, because there are just so many story arcs in there. There's just so much rich historical things. And like you pointed out, I mean, the Clone Wars is really the central, I guess.
It's the centerpiece.
It is.
It is the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone, really, of the whole Star Wars. Really, I mean, that's where the war comes from. It's the Clone Wars. That's essentially what it's birthed out of.
Right. I mean, because even in Episode 4, it's referenced.
Right.
I remember when, watching it in 1977, when she was like, years ago you served my father during the Clone Wars. We're like, what
is that?
I missed something, right? Because I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
And you as a kid, even for myself, you think it's just the war on good and evil, or the war of the Empire versus the rebels or whatnot. But you don't understand that, what even led up to 4. That's where you get Andor. That's why you have the Clone Wars. All this stuff is preceded. That's how we get here. All this stuff is basically one continuation after another.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, actually. It was Episode 2 and 3. Episode 2 is the beginning. Episode 3 is the end. I mean, really, the Phantom Menace is the only outlier, if you think about it. So, absolutely. The Clone Wars...
was really the setup.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, honestly, the Clone Wars series just basically takes place during episodes 2 and 3, so it gives us more of a complete picture. So,
it's
story expansion, sure. Were there things that were expanded in Rebels? I mean, absolutely. It gives us a little bit of an idea of what happens to some of the Jedi after Order 66. It gives us Lothal. It gives us the Inquisitors. It gives us, Darth Vader, and then Ahsoka meeting up with him, and then, Ahsoka, where is she during all this? I mean, there's a lot of things that it does give us from a story perspective, but as far as expanding the story, I think I can speak for both of us when I say it just does not stand up to the Clone Wars series.
Now, the one thing I will give Rebels is, and you have it on there if you can bring up your
Well, I was going to anyway because I wanted to move on to the next thing. But by all means,
Yeah. But I
like
think
a board meeting right now.
Right. The thing I think what really made Rebels shine was the 2 points you have on here: the expanded Force mysticism, and then the introduction of the early Imperial oppression. I think that's where you really start to see the change from it being the Republic into the Empire. And that's where, I mean, I won't say you won't see the change. I mean,
you know
you
what,
see
though?
obviously.
I mean, here's my thing, and this is the reason why I still gave it to Clone Wars, because I would argue that the Bad Batch did a better job than Rebels in expanding that part of the story.
True. Now, the Bad Batch started in the Clone Wars, but even then, though, it's like, I think the Bad Batch is his own thing, though.
Well, in the Bad Batch, if I remember correctly, it also actually happens earlier. Like, we pick it up right after the Order 66 is given. That's basically where it starts. But I think it went, like, what, 3 seasons?
Yeah.
So I don't think it actually gets to the beginning of Rebels yet. I think that the Bad Batch is where we said that the Rebels is kind of like in the later half between episodes 3 and 4. Bad Batch is the earlier half.
Okay, yeah, that's accurate. But I think, I think even in this though, it's like I think you're really starting to see the oppression. So it's kind of like in the Bad Batch, you see the beginnings of them starting to churn things. Things are you're starting to see the change from clone troopers to stormtroopers. You're seeing that actually happen. But then now when we get to Rebels, they're actually fully stormtroopers at this point. And the other thing is like now this is kind of, Rebels is kind of basically a prequel to Andor.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of Andor light, because I would argue if you're gonna talk about, you know, the early Imperial oppression. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Rebels started it. It came before Andor, obviously.
Yeah.
Both in and out of universe, but well, kind of. Actually, Rebels sort of takes place afterwards, or like right on top. But
yeah.
Andor, I would say, probably did the best job of really showing us that Imperial oppression and when it fully didn't look like the Republic anymore. Because in season 1 in Andor, you see the senators are still, you know, they're kind of going through the motions. Like, you notice that the Senate chamber or whatever is a little emptier than it was when we last saw it in episode 3. But, you know, it still kind of looks like the Republic. I think that's the thing. In season 1 of Andor, it's almost like how Attack of the Clones versus Revenge of the Sith. By the time Revenge of the Sith happens, especially toward the end, that's when Palpatine's like, yeah, I don't really have to hide this anymore. And now I'm going to make my move. And that's really what you're getting also in the whole Rebels versus, like, say, Andor. Is that Andor, season 1, it's still kind of the tail end of it looking like the Republic, even though it really isn't. And then season 2, it's like, yeah, no, this is a different thing.
Yeah.
All right, so now character development. Let's move on to character development. So, on the Clone Wars side, you have the expansion of Anakin's arc. You have the deepened Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Captain Rex thing, because I forgot, we didn't mention Captain Rex yet, but he's very prominent in the whole Clone Wars thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it enhanced the humanity of the clones. You get a little bit of a sense of that in episode 3, but the Clone Wars is really where that deepens. But then on the Rebel side, you get Ezra Bridger, Kanan Jarrus. You know, it's more focused on them. And that's interesting because you have a relationship where a guy that's still technically a Padawan is finding himself having to act as a master to a new Padawan, you know, Ezra, right? You get this expanded version of Hera and Sabine, and it's basically emphasizing, you know, family and teamwork. So I think, again, this is a really tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this, I just want to give these guys a closer view of this for a second. You can actually make the argument, on both sides.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this is where we're really gonna have the friction, just because I guess it depends on what you really lean on or what matters to. Because I think the Rebels does a great job of creating that family teamwork.
Oh, if David's watching.
Right, it's almost and it's very much funny,
and it is
Fast and the Furious. And I never thought about it until you just said that. I'm like, you know what?
I've been waiting to make this point. It literally is the Star Wars version of Fast and Furious.
True, especially like the missions and stuff that they're going on and things that they're doing, and it's
by the way, it's about as realistic. First couple movies aside, just to go back, the first couple of Fast and Furious movies were, especially the first one. The first one's like a crime drama, right? It's not even necessarily like, but by the time they get to like 6 and 7 and all that, it's Mission Impossible at this point. But that's basically what it's like. It's very much like that. So is Rebels? Is that what you're leaning towards?
I don't know, because that's why I say because in thinking about it, it's like, okay, I do love the family aspect and the camaraderie and just how they function as a team and as a unit. And it's weird because it kind of almost makes you want to. It almost kind of makes you think of like maybe this is what Luke, Han, and Leia were kind of supposed to be, in a way. But I think even the Rebels team did it better than Han, Luke, and Leia probably would have.
Well, more so because of the story, I think.
Yeah, just because of the story, right?
Because the expanded universe version of them, it kind of is like that.
Yeah, but then when you look out on the Clone Wars side, right, we have, so much information about Anakin, and watching him grow, develop, how he's having to train Ahsoka, what that's like, going from Snips and Sky Guy to, like, I know.
I just had PTSD right there, man.
I know. Now you know how I feel about when you bring up Visions. But so when you have that, in the beginning, and then it's like, okay, but then you see the growth of their relationship. Then you also see the growth with Obi-Wan within that. One of the things that I really love, that whole arc where Obi-Wan went undercover and Anakin didn't know, and he thought Obi-Wan was killed, and how that affected Anakin. Like Anakin
was cool.
Unhinged for a minute. Cool. Yeah, like he went to that one. It was what he was with Hondo, and he went to that one bar, and it's that snail-looking creature, and he started force choking. I was like, whoa,
that was
like he was really because that became their family though. It's like Ahsoka, Anakin, Obi-Wan. That was kind of like their own little faction. It was like there was almost kind of like the Bad Batch, how they were with Omega, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So, are you going Clone Wars? I'm trying to nail down an answer here.
I know.
It's a finite show, man. We can't keep, sure, I wouldn't mind staying on for a 24-hour telethon and raising money for some cause. But since we're not doing that, fine, you can decide. I'm going to go ahead with Rebels. And the reason why I say that, I'm definitely going with Rebels. And the reason why I say that is because it's a smaller group that you can actually focus way more. And if you really think about it, if you do an A/B on both of those series, you get way more in depth with the characters in Rebels than you do with the Clone Wars, simply because they have so much in the Clone Wars they have to cover. See, the strength that Clone Wars has with the story expansion is kind of it's almost like a reverse with the character development, because obviously Rebels expanded the story as well, but it just didn't have as much, right? There's a lot more rich history. It's a more key cornerstone era. All of that. And that's why it has the edge in story expansion. But I would argue that Rebels, for almost the same reasons, has the edge in character development because you can spend more time with each one of these guys. It went half the seasons. So, and yes, you do bring up great points about Anakin, Ahsoka, the fact that, you're delving into all these relationships. You have Obi-Wan, who he has this love for Satine, but he's also torn between that and his sense of duty and everything else. Absolutely. Again, one of the reasons why this is such a great topic is because it really is so close.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you say, okay, this one has the edge or that one has the edge, it's really not by much. I mean, this isn't like comparing it to, something that would be far, far less, because what would be the point in doing that?
Yeah.
So that's probably why, because, they delve a lot into Kanan. I mean, if you even look at Kanan's journey, and then you look at Maul's journey in Rebels, you look at all of these characters and how they really went in depth, and then, of course, you had Ezra. Ezra started out being, trained by Kanan and everything, and then he kind of fell under Maul's spell a little bit, and you had that whole thing. You really got to spend some time. You had the whole Fulcrum thing where, I forgot that guy's name, Callus.
Mm-hmm.
He started out, and for the first half of Rebels, he's like a total bad guy, and he was really, really good villain.
Yeah.
And then they just spun that. They did a complete 180, and it's just like, whoa. At first you think, oh, okay, this is kind of cheap, but then you realize, no, it's not. And why isn't it? Because they took the time to develop Callus's character. So when he does turn, there are actual reasons for it. When he becomes a good guy, you really feel it. You almost feel like you're on a journey with these guys. And so that's the reason why I personally would give the edge to Rebels.
I'm going to go Clone Wars.
After all that, it's like,
no, I mean, and
I'm going Clone Wars.
No, because but that's the thing. And listening to your response helped me.
And all the crap that you're spewing, I see it's clearly Clone Wars.
No, I'm just gonna say Clone Wars just because. Yeah, I think Clone Wars has all of that. The things that everything that you said about Rebels, Clone Wars has, but also you have the stakes, and you also have like the development of some of the more gut-wrenching stories, like when Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order because she was framed. I mean, like that whole. I mean,
yep. You also have
that's something that
Asajj's
can't be
turn
ignored.
too.
Asajj, doing her thing.
Don't forget season 7. You got a lot of stuff with season 7.
Even the whole thing with the training, like when, oh man, I love that scene when he was like, I'm training her, because Anakin basically, I'm training her for when I'm not around. And he kept putting her in that situation where she had all those clone troopers around her, and she had to try to defend herself. He kept making her do it again and again and again, and she was getting frustrated. But then it came in handy, season 7, when they all turned on her, and she had to kind of like use that. And I was just like, man, like that was just so great. So, and I think the storytelling in that, again, going back to the first part, just the storytelling with those characters, it was just really, really good. The whole Barriss Offee, like I said earlier, that whole thing, just the development and creation of what was that one? It was Yoda with the Force. When he went to that one planet, you basically asked Anakin to break him out.
Yeah.
And then he went on his little sabbatical. He went to that one place, and then he had to face himself. I mean, that's a avenue of Yoda we've never seen before. We've never seen Yoda tempted.
But I mean, here's the thing, though, because you also have to look at the fact of you can't just automatically say that, because you have 22 episodes of like 7 seasons, with the exception of season 6. So I mean, sure, there was a couple, like one I think of Rebels that might have gone 22, but most of them were like 15 and it only went like 4 seasons. And yet, you know, you had all this. I mean, even the droids in Rebels had like deep stories. You know, then of course you had the whole Sabine thing, and that's it. And that's why I would give the edge to it because, yeah, I mean, sure, there's the thing about Clone Wars, and that's why I even said at the top of the show. I mean, it would be real easy to just give the edge to Clone Wars for everything. But a lot of that is because it had time to do it, because you had all these different stories. And, of course, you know, the other thing that we said at the top of the show, and you can't ignore this, Lucas is the one that made that one. You know, that was the last Lucas one. Filoni was helping him out, and he had some input, but it was Lucas that was actually making that stuff.
No, that's why it's better. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's why I say it would really be easy to do it. But I mean, if you stop and really, you know, really do it. And again, no matter what, doesn't matter where you land on this, whether you think in any of these categories as Clone Wars or Rebels, it's really not by much. I mean, you're basically talking about 2 series that are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah.
All right, this one obviously is going now to be the EU characters. So this one's going to be really interesting too, because again, there was more time in the Clone Wars, but I don't know. So the EU characters for the Clone Wars, it introduced us to Ahsoka, it introduced us to Cad Bane, it reintroduced Darth Maul, which he ended up becoming like the Jason Voorhees of the Star Wars universe. Like, right. You know, I mean, first of all, we're like, wait, the guy that was cut in half? Okay, he came back. Not only did he come back, this guy is like second only to C-3PO and being in all the, you know, he pops up in Solo. I mean, it's just like, wow, all right, whatever.
Here's Johnny.
And then, of course, final thing that it did was it expanded the Mandalorian culture because, you know, we had heard things in the expanded universe and comics and things like that about, you know, Mandalore, but this one is the one that really, really took some of those stories and brought them in, including the Siege of Mandalore, by the way. That was a really big expanded universe thing. But Rebels did integrate Thrawn into canon. And unlike what we were talking about with Clone Wars, Clone Wars either reintroduced or created characters. But the thing that's interesting here is that this one actually is taking a character that was previously not canon from the expanded universe, and very popular one at that, and canonizing them. So there's that. Of course, Rebels also reintroduced Maul and Vader, because like I said, Maul is going to be like in every project moving forward till the end of time, it seems. Well, till the end of Rebels, actually. And then, of course, and that's another thing that's not on here, but it should be pointed out, is Rebels actually gave us the death of Maul, presumably. And then, obviously, it expanded the Mandalorian lore via Sabine. So what that did is basically just kind of take, like, a single character, whereas the Clone Wars expanded it via, like, a more macro. Rebels did it on a more micro. So, all right, given these two now,
I'm going to go Rebels.
Yeah, I'm
going to go.
I think I am too, because, something else that wasn't listed on there, it brought the Inquisitors in.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, the whole Inquisitor thing, I enjoyed, and I think even just Thrawn alone. Like, I think Thrawn, in a way, he can just carry this by himself.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly.
I kind of hung on that one.
As much as I love Cad Bane, but Thrawn, man, just the way he's...
And Cad was in Rebels too, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure Cad was in Rebels as well.
Might have been.
Yeah, look that up.
I want to say yes.
I'm pretty sure he was.
Because that's when they had to do that whole... Because Because that's also when we got what's her face, Fennec Shan, right?
Yep. I think so.
Yeah.
Or no, wait, was Fennec Shan? She might have been No, you're right. She was brought into live action through the Book of Boba Fett, but she was actually introduced as an animated character in Rebels.
Yep.
In fact, man, now I'm like confusing the series. I'm pretty sure that Rebels is when Boba Fett was actually trying to get revenge on Mace, and I'm pretty sure Fennec Shan was in that episode, as was
I don't think Shan was in that
and some
one.
of those other guys.
I don't think Fennec Shan was in that one.
Well, no, that's right. That was Aura Singh.
Yeah.
Aura Singh was in that one. But I think you're right. I don't think it was Clone Wars. I think she was brought in via Rebels, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. I mean, when you think of that, the Inquisitors, just a lot of the reintroductions of different characters, just all kinds of different EU type stuff. I think Quinlan Voss was introduced in there too. I mean, obviously he was brought into canon through Revenge of the Sith, but he's definitely in there. Obviously Asajj, who was introduced in Clone Wars, but comes back. Yeah, the whole thing between Ahsoka and Vader, which is, I guess it's not really, if you're really sticking with EU characters though, I still think, yeah, Rebels probably gets the edge on that one.
Yeah, like I said, just even with Thrawn alone, I mean, I think he can pretty much carry the team on that one. Just
well, it's not just It's not just. It was also what was that governor chick's name?
Price.
Yeah, she was technically in one of the novels. Now that might have been a newer canon novel. I think that was in like Timothy Zahn's new canon versions of the Thrawn novels, because there was like a trilogy of those. But that's in there. I mean, there's a lot of things that, because it also depends on when you're talking about the EU. You could be talking strictly Legends, and that would be fine. I mean, if somebody wanted to do that, that's perfectly acceptable. And generally, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
However, if you do want to expand that a little bit, no pun intended, to include like novels and comics and things like that are even in new canon, but not, because one of the things that was called, the reason why it was called the expanded universe was because it wasn't in the movies, right? So, I mean, I guess you can almost apply that definition, even though everything's been canonized, still technically part of the expanded universe.
From a certain point of view, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I could do that. But I mean, it's just really intriguing how, when you look at all of this, because we just watched an interview with George Lucas right before coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but it seems like all of a sudden, he's doing like a press tour. I don't know. But, and of course we found the whole thing about why he's talking backward, why Yoda talks backwards and all that stuff, being like,
man, that was mind blowing.
Yeah,
like,
that was crazy.
Jesus. Like, it's something so simple, but yet so profound. And that's why that's why I agree. That's why it's one of my favorite quotes by Bruce Lee, like, simplicity is the key to brilliance sometimes. Because a simple concept of, hey, this movie is for kids. Yoda's the philosopher. What's going to make the kids pay attention to this old green frog looking thing? It
has a lot of dialogue.
That has a lot of dialogue. Like, and how do I get, and he's supposed to be giving them the good wisdom, but how do I get kids to pay attention to him? Because if I just make them say the lines like, you can either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. There is no try. You could say it like that, but if you put an accent on him or you have him talk in a different kind of way, and have them say the same thing, magically it sticks. And they're like, you know what? It made me think of, again, Miyagi. The fact that you got this Japanese guy with, you know, you know, giving Daniel all this information, you know, it just like, wax on, wax off. Like that becomes a cultural thing, but it just because he has this Japanese accent, which the guy doesn't even use. Like Pat Morita doesn't even talk like that.
Oh, I know.
Like that just blew my mind too. It's just like, what?
Well,
Again,
it's
like,
funny because when I first heard him talk like that in the Karate Kid, because I remember him from Happy Days, and he
Right.
uses normal American accent in Happy Days. So then I started thinking, like, whoa, how good is this guy with an American accent? Like, I thought that the Karate Kid was like his actual voice, and then
right.
for Happy Days he was putting on more of an American accent. Until I then saw interviews with him and like, oh no, it's the other way around.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm
Uh-oh.
saying. Like just taking something as simple as that, and but understanding the why. And this is why I always like. I'm always loving the why people do things, because a lot of times that unravels so much. And yeah, when I saw that today, I was just
Well, it just
like
shows
the
you though,
goat.
and this goes into this conversation, and this is why, Clone Wars was so brilliant, because there is a lot more thought that's actually going into what Lucas does or did than a lot of people are giving him credit. It's like
100%.
people are going to just basically critique the results or whatever, which, I mean, that's just human nature.
Right.
But it's like when you actually say, oh, this is why he's doing certain things, and he reveals that, now it suddenly puts a whole different spin on things. You have a new appreciation for a particular part of this wonderful universe that he created, because you're like, oh, well, now that I know why he's doing this, that makes a lot more sense. And again, it just shows you the nuances, the details of
Yes.
everything that he did, and that's what's missing from the Disney era Star Wars. Except for some reason, well, it's because you have Tony Gilroy basically overseeing Andor, and he understands that. And Rogue One, sure, it was mostly done by Gareth Edwards, but a lot of it was Tony Gilroy as well. So, you do have that. Solo, I think, benefited from the fact that Ron Howard came in, because Ron Howard gets that kind of storytelling. So you do have people that are in the periphery of the Star Wars universe that understand it. I mean, even Filoni gets it. It's just he doesn't have the kind of experience yet to manifest that into live action. Animation, remember, he was like the other guy making the Clone Wars next to Lucas, and then he was the guy making Rebels. And it's actually, it's a testimony to him that we can say, hey, Rebels and Clone Wars it's really tough. Because if you think about it, Lucas being the one that predominantly was doing Clone Wars, I mean, it should have been like a runaway, victory.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not shows that Obi-Wan has taught Filoni well. And Filoni really does get it. And that's, you just hope that at some point Disney can recapture this in the live action, or have Kathleen Kennedy step down, or, maybe sell the property. I don't know.
Yeah. But this is great though.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually fun. This is the kind of thing, and these are the kind of shows that we like to do as well. Just these little comparison shows. I mean, sure, sometimes we'll run across things online that we want to comment on and bring to you guys and get your opinion on it. Other times, we generate our own stuff. What was the thing I just was floating today that I said, oh, this might be a good thing for us to do? I found it, of course, on comicbook.com.
The Empire Strikes Back thing?
Yeah, like it wasn't Easter eggs, was it? What was it? It was like plot holes or things we missed, or
From continuity errors to curious props, get ready to embark on a journey that will forever change how you watch Empire Strikes Back.
yeah, it's kind of like an Empire Strikes Back centric thing. That seemed interesting. But I mean, there's there's enough happening again in the Star Wars. You heard that they've shelved the Rey movie yet again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was this like
What
the
a shock.
third time now? Well, the thing I feel bad about though is the fact that like Daisy Ridley has probably cleared her schedule like multiple times, and at some point she's probably like, I want to take on another movie here at some point, people. I mean, y'all got to make up your minds.
Right.
But it just, I don't know. I really think that the fact that they're shelving this, it's like every time I think that Disney is starting to get their act together with Star Wars, they do something else. There's rumblings
Find ways to disappoint you.
Well, everybody's got to be good at something. But when it comes to this big battle of the animated series, right, between Clone Wars, between Rebels, what about you guys? What did you think? You saw that we based it on 3 different criteria. We based it on story expansion, essentially, character development, almost forgot, and then, of course, the EU characters. Now, you can let us know your thoughts in the comments section on our Facebook page at Head to Head SW, or our X, whatever. You guys can let us know what you think. However, you can also expand that. Maybe you have something other than those 3 criteria upon which you want to base your opinion. Which one do you like better? So there's all kinds of ways that we can continue the discussion. And of course, there's also our Discord too. You'll find the link in the description. All of our social media. Once again, you guys know the drill. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed. If you have subscribed, you might want to hit that notification bell, because lately it seems our schedule has been in flux, to say the least, right? If you're lucky, it's just a time shift. Sometimes we have to shift days. This was supposed to be last week's show, just so you guys know. So, we're kind of like that. Did you ever see the movie Crawl?
No.
Oh, man. You got to see that. Krull. Came out in like 82-ish. Really good movie. But one of the things about that movie, the reason why I bring it up, it wasn't just like some sporadic thing. It's because one of the big things with the villain's base is that the base would just like teleport to a new location like every 24 hours. So that way, if you were planning an attack, you never knew what was going to appear next. So that was kind of a cool little thing, right? And that's kind of how our show is. Is that you never know when we're going live next. So if you have subscribed to the channel, you might want to hit the notification bell. I'm just saying. All right.
Speaking of old movies, tomorrow is the anniversary of one of the greatest films ever. 1989, Batman.
Oh,
released.
yeah, that's right. And they actually had the outfit like on display somewhere. I saw that, which I'm assuming is them celebrating it. So,
which is funny because I didn't even know. Like, I know this has nothing to do with Star Wars, but
yeah, I mean the show is basically we're just chatting live now.
I know.
I mean, you guys can comment on this if you want, but
the cool thing is that when they released this, when they started the marketing for this, there was like they never said Batman. It was just the emblem, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember
June 23rd, and I was like, man, like I forgot about that, but like, yeah, everybody knew exactly what was coming. And I just thought that was just,
And this, if you look at that logo, my grandmother, I remember, she's long gone now. She passed away in '98, but I remember when that movie came out, and she was like, "Hey, what? I see this Batman movie. What's the deal with the teeth?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "This thing," and it was the logo. If you look at that logo a certain way, it does look like a mouth with teeth. And I'm like, whoa. And I can't, I've never been able to unsee it ever since she brought that up.
That is hilarious.
So all the life
that's so
lessons,
precious. That's a grandma thing to do.
It totally is. But here's the thing that's bad. the part that's bad is, of all the wisdom, all the little things that she imparted on me, that's the lasting legacy this woman has had. Like, I can't stop thinking about that. I'm like...
Of all the things that she probably could have taught, sat me down.
Yeah, I'm sure I forgot, like really important life lessons, but I sure remember her saying, hey, what's with the teeth in this movie?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, that was good. But I mean, hey, well, you know what? I mean, we ever do a show on anything like that in the Star Wars universe where it's similar to when Michael Keaton was first announced as Batman and we were all like, what? Mr. Mom? As Batman? That's
Really?
never going to work. The guy's like a comedy actor. Now, granted, there was a movie that came out in...
Well, didn't Beetlejuice come out? Did that come out before or after?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think before. I think it came out in like 87 or something. But that would just further cement it.
I mean, granted, Beetlejuice is more of a comedy.
Way more. Because that's the thing. Michael Keaton back then was known more for comedies than he was for anything else. I mean, the big drama, there were two dramas that he made. One was Clean and Sober, just phenomenal movie, where he plays an alcoholic trying to get sober. I mean, it's an incredible dramatic performance, and it was a really well done movie. The other movie that he made that I think came out after Batman, but it might have been before, was Pacific Heights.
Yeah.
That
Beetlejuice
movie
came out 88.
Okay. Wow, was it really?
Yeah. So it was basically a year before. I think that's probably what threw everybody off, because it's like, dude, you just made
everything
Beetlejuice.
did. I mean, because you got to remember that back then we all grew up on Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton did a lot of movies. He did a really good movie called Gung Ho. That was about, he was like he worked for an auto factory or whatever, and the Japanese took it over and started, it's a total comedy. Like George Wendt was in it. The guy that played Long Duck Dong from 16 Candles was the other main character in it. It's a great movie, hilarious. But it had a really good message and was kind of a feel-good ending, and so that's what everybody knew Michael Keaton as. So just like this sort of slapstick comedy, kind of like how Tom Hanks was. But then again, Tom Hanks turned too. He ended up doing all these like dramatic roles as well. And now people look at him differently. He's not the star of like The Money Pit, like what was it called, The Bachelor or something like that, and some of these other comedies that he did in the early days.
All right, now he's Forrest Gump. He's in the Green Mile. He's
Philadelphia, where he's playing some AIDS patient. I mean, he kind of did it to Captain Phillips, all that stuff, right? But the question is, though, and this might actually make a good topic for our show at some point, is there anybody in the Star Wars universe that was cast as in a Star Wars role that we were like, what?
Daniel Craig is a stormtrooper.
Yeah, but we didn't know that till after that.
I know, I'm just teasing.
I'm trying to, I don't know if that's ever, I mean, I'm sure somebody had to have been.
Yeah, that's a good one to think about.
We should think about that, because that would be a good show, I think, is if we basically did that. Because another thing, if we ever get this Entertainment Exchange channel off the ground, which the channel exists, by the way, you guys want to subscribe to it, go ahead and subscribe to it. I promise we will eventually have content on there. That's going to be our general entertainment show. That would be a good topic for the general entertainment show.
Yeah.
It's like people that were cast in movies that, you're kind of like, what?
Yeah. That'd be a good first show.
It might be a good first show. Well, at least, all right, see that? We're producing other shows now, live, on our Star Wars show. I want to thank any of the viewers that are still hanging in and still watching. Because we sure aren't talking about that anymore.
Nope.
Unless you want to transition it to Battle of the Animated Series, the 90s Batman series.
Ooh, don't do that. There's no comparison. The 90s Batman series, the animated series will always win. Hands down.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. All right, well, again, if you guys want to continue any of these discussions, you can on our Facebook page. I usually check the Facebook page and Discord. I'm on Discord a lot, so if you guys want to, hang out there, that's cool. Even on our Discord thing, we got a Call of Duty lobby. I regularly go in there. So even if you're not playing, you can still talk to me while I'm playing. If that kind of thing,
tickles your fancy.
Yeah, is basically something you guys want to do. Hey, whatever. We're around. All right, so with that, I think we'll wrap up this show. We'll see you guys next week. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.